I am Luke Reynolds at the FDIC. At the FDIC, we're committed to expanding economic inclusion in the financial mainstream by ensuring that all Americans have access to affordable and sustainable products and services from insured depository institutions. FDIC's economic inclusion initiatives are integral to our mission of maintaining stability and public confidence in the nation's financial system. So I am particularly honored to present to you our panel today. Reba Dominski is EVP and Chief Social Responsibility Officer and President of the U.S. Bank Foundation. Reba leads U.S. Bank's efforts to maximize social and environmental impact. Darlene Goines is head of the Banking Inclusion Initiative for Wells Fargo, where she's responsible for the overall strategy and direction of the Banking Inclusion Initiative. Previously, Darlene served as head of the Financial Health Philanthropy for Wells Fargo Foundation. Reba, why don't we start with you? What efforts have been successful in driving impact?
Well, Luke, let me start by saying thank you to you and Darlene. It is such an honor to be a part of this panel on such an important topic. You know, when I think about what has driven impact at U.S. Bank, I can think of several efforts, and all of them involve strong internal partnership across our enterprise and strong external partnerships with community partners who are on the ground doing the real heavy lifting and the hard work. I often call them our community heroes. I think one of the best examples where we've had impact is our work in the Pullman community on the south side of Chicago. And if you haven't looked up Pullman, I would encourage our viewers to Google Pullman, specifically the Pullman Porters, so you understand the rich history that this community has, especially in the civil rights movement in our country. So what happened was that the bank had an acquisition in the Pullman community. And as part of our acquisition and transition, we met with leaders in the community and we listened to their lived experiences, we listened to their needs. And really, we asked one very simple question, which is often the question that we ask when working with community, and that's, how can we help? That led to a partnership with an incredible local organization called the Chicago Neighborhood Initiative, or CNI. So over the last decade, guided by CNI, U.S. Bank has leveraged resources across the company to invest more than $120 million in the Pullman community. And using our leverage, we've incented a total of $400 million in investments. So for example, financing a method soap factory, financing the Walmart. These investments have stimulated economic and community development, and they've created almost 1,500 jobs over the past 10 years. Now, what I'm the most excited about is kind of the ripple effects of what's happened in this community as a result of this economic and community development. The community has seen a 10% increase in college graduation rates and a 52% decrease in crime. So we actually recently completed a case study of this work with the University of Chicago, and we're using what we're learning to explore more place-based investment opportunities. And we continue to build with Pullman and CNI. We donated the land for a community center that's now up and running. I've been there, it's fantastic. And we've launched, in partnership with Operation Hope, a financial wellness coach program in the Pullman neighborhood in our branch. And the goal of that program, of course, is to increase credit scores, savings, and confidence, with the emphasis on serving people of color and unbanked or underbanked individuals. So that Pullman example is one that continues to grow and evolve and have tremendous impact, Luke.
Darlene, what would you like to add?
Sure. So I'll build on what Reba shared. And, you know, looking at COVID-19, the pandemic, I think it's really heightened awareness around the financial hardships that so many people were already facing in the U.S. and the longstanding and deep-rooted racial inequities and systemic barriers and disparities that exist in every aspect of our society. The need for financial inclusion and empowering financial dignity has never been more important. And so Wells Fargo has really worked on many fronts to help stabilize families who have been struggling financially and build towards an inclusive recovery. We focused particularly on addressing issues and removing barriers that have impacted the ability of diverse communities and other marginalized groups to participate fully in the economy and ultimately build wealth. Just a few examples. We leveraged our philanthropy to help people that were left behind, immigrants, Native communities, through direct cash assistance programs and specialized financial counseling and coaching. We continue to support Hope Inside Disaster through Operation Hope to deliver free financial coaching and emergency assistance services to low-income individuals who have lost their jobs, who may be dealing with newly reduced hours or struggling to maintain housing. We saw that small businesses were particularly challenged like never before, especially Black and Hispanic-owned businesses. And so in response, we launched the Open for Business Fund, where we invested all of our gross processing fees that we received from the Paycheck Protection Program from our 2020 lending. It was approximately $420 million to help racially and ethnically diverse owned small businesses stay open, maintain jobs, and grow. And those results from the Open for Business Fund have been remarkable. More than 253,000 jobs have been preserved or created, and more than 148,000 small businesses have been served. And then we're also doing things to support our customers. We helped more than 3.7 million consumer and small business customers by deferring payments and waiving fees, and we continue to provide accommodations. So we encourage that as our customers encounter challenges, please continue to contact us. We want to help both our customers and communities. And then I guess another thing that I'd like to add is that the pandemic really shined a light on the importance of having a low-cost bank account. When we think back to the CARES Act and the economic payments that the government made to millions of struggling households in the U.S., how were those funds initially distributed? They were distributed to people who had bank account information on file at the IRS. So for the over 7 million households in the U.S. who are unbanked, who are disproportionately Black and African American, Hispanic, or Native American, if they were eligible to receive the stimulus, they had to wait because they didn't have a bank account. And we know that a low-cost bank account is a meaningful starting point to fully participating in the economy and achieving financial stability. And Wells Fargo, as being one of the largest consumer banks, we have a responsibility to take action, to build on existing efforts and work with key stakeholders to make a difference. So to tackle this challenging issue, we really reimagined our approach, and in May, we launched the Banking Inclusion Initiative, which is Wells Fargo's 10-year commitment to help more people who are unbanked access affordable banking services, whether through Wells Fargo or another provider. And I'm honored to be leading the Banking Inclusion Initiative for Wells Fargo.
Thank you so much for that information. We at the FDIC have an initiative called Get Banked, which is similarly situated in terms of trying to bring in some of the historically unbanked populations into the banking system. So thank you for those wonderful answers. Darlene, let me start with you. Are diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives enough, or do we need to shift our internal culture?
I think we need both. So in addition to the externally focused initiatives that I mentioned earlier, including the Banking Inclusion Initiative, I can share a little bit about Wells Fargo's progress in shifting our culture. As a company, we are committed to doing the work to provide our employees with an inclusive and respectful workplace where diverse talent really flourishes. And while we have more work to do, we definitely have more work to do, we've taken a number of steps that include creating the diverse segments representation and inclusion group, reporting directly to the CEO. And this group is accountable for progress and execution of new and existing programs. They conduct diversity-focused talent reviews and sponsorship programs to help promote underrepresented groups. They assess our senior leaders on increasing diverse representation at leadership levels, and they're requiring unconscious bias training for all managers. We value diversity and inclusion, not just as a business imperative, but because it's the right thing to do. And that requires, among other things, that we continue to engage with underrepresented leaders at the company who can help inform and guide actions that meet the individual needs of these communities. I have the opportunity to participate in the Black and African American Executive Leaders Forum, and we have monthly dialogues with the leader of the Diverse Segments Representation and Inclusion team, as well as the CEO. And it's in having those authentic conversations about what is needed, where there are gaps, where there are opportunities for us to improve, we are making that shift in our culture.
Thank you. Reba, what would you like to add?
Boy, Darlene, we have so much in common. I agree with you that it is absolutely about a shift in culture. And I will say that about 7 miles from where I sit is where George Floyd was murdered. U.S. Bank is headquartered in Minneapolis, in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And so that incident rocked us to our very core. And what happened as a result is we started opening up conversations in the boardroom at the top of the house around race, around difference and inclusion, around equity, around the racial wealth gap. And I want to start by saying that I think any powerful movement or shift starts with acknowledging history. And I think we have to acknowledge our role in financial services in creating some of the disparities that we now seek to address. But my favorite quote is from Maya Angelou, and it's, "Once you know better, then you do better." And that's what our focus is on at US Bank, knowing better and doing better. And certainly changing systems so that they help and they don't hurt people requires the full resources of our company. And when I say resources, I'm talking about both human and financial resources. So one of the best examples that I can give you is that last year we promoted our Chief Diversity Officer, Greg Cunningham, to report directly to our CEO and become a member of our managing committee. So Greg is now in the room where it happens, and he has been able to leverage his seat to engage all of our business lines around the work of closing racial wealth gaps. And as a result, in February, US Bank launched the US Bank Access Commitment. This is a long-term series of initiatives to address persistent racial wealth gaps and increase wealth building opportunities, starting with the Black community. It focuses on providing capital for small businesses owned and led by people of color, housing and home ownership, and workforce advancement. And these are all critical to creating systemic change. So again, I will quote Maya Angelou and say, for all of you watching and listening, once you know better, then you have to do better. So we know better, and we're committed to doing better at US Bank.
Thank you. Reba, question for you. How do we measure success?
Yeah, it's such an important question, Luke. We have to demonstrate the impact that we're making. Our announcements, our commitments, all the words are good and they're important, but we have to hold ourselves accountable to them. Did the money go out the door? How many businesses were impacted? How did we help individuals and families power their potential? So one of the ways that we are planning on driving accountability at US Bank is that we've started a partnership with the Urban Institute to help us measure social impact specific to that access commitment that I just talked about. So we're engaging a partner, a third party, to help us define, track, and evaluate social impact across all of our initiatives at US Bank. That partnership just kicked off last month, and we are excited to share some of our initial metrics in early 2022. One of the projects that the Urban Institute is helping us with is to create a theory of change for the bank. When you think about changing systems, this is hard work. This is 400 plus years that we are trying to address of inequity. And so through the creation of a theory of change and a related set of metrics and deliverables, we are confident that we will not only be able to identify and prioritize the right initiatives, the right projects, the right work for us to be doing across the bank, but also to deprioritize and have the courage to let go of the things that aren't working, that aren't helping us close those amazingly large racial wealth gaps that have existed in this country for far too long.
Thank you. Darlene, would you like to add anything?
Sure. We are in a similar situation, Reba. I think we are kindred spirits, and we probably should get to know each other really well after this session. When we launched the Banking Inclusion Initiative this year, it's our 10-year commitment to help more people who are unbanked gain access to affordable banking products. We were transparent about the fact that this is a difficult, long-standing issue. If it were straightforward, it would have been solved a long time ago. And so for that reason, we started with a test and learn approach before we scaled the initiative. It really allows us to explore more than one approach to drive solutions and measure success, and take the time to learn what will drive impact. And so we structured the Banking Inclusion Initiative around three components: increasing access to affordable products and digital solutions, expanding access to financial education and advice, and launching a national unbanked advisory task force of national and community partners who understand and can bring the unique voices of the communities that they serve into the room with us. And in doing so, we will define a set of actions and solutions that will remove barriers to financial inclusion, increase access to low-cost banking, and foster economic advancement for diverse communities. And we're at the starting point of really answering the question around how do we measure success. Again, we know that it's a complex problem. It's complicated. There are a number of reasons why people are unbanked and operate outside of the mainstream banking system. We've seen what the FDIC's 2019 survey said in terms of the top reasons for why people are unbanked or underbanked. But as we peel back the layers of the onion, we start to see both commonalities as well as differences in barriers, real and perceived, for different diverse communities. And so we are, again, at the starting point. We're taking this test and learn approach. We think we're going to need different solutions and approaches for different diverse communities. And we're looking forward to working with our task force to identify what those long-term commitments should be and sharing those in the near future.
Thank you. And the research Darlene talked about is available at economicinclusion.gov. Again, economicinclusion.gov. There you can find our How America Banks report, which summarizes which provides data at national and MSA level on who is unbanked. I think that was all my prepared questions. Do you have any closing thoughts or comments?
You know, I'd just like to build, Darlene, on your offer to get to know each other and to connect. You know, one of the things that I think is such a big opportunity for us is to think about what can we do together. So when I think about Operation HOPE's Financial Literacy for All, for example, that initiative, when I think about some of the OCC and their Project Reach initiative, which I know both Wells Fargo and US Bank and most of the other major banks in this country are involved in, this feels like an opportunity to come together, we're so protective of our brands. I used to work at Target, and I remember when we suggested we poured Coke and Pepsi in the same, in the same space, and it was controversial. But I think there are some issues, like this issue of financial inclusion, of racial wealth gaps, where we are better together. And I think that is the forum that Operation Hope provides for us. Next week, I hope to see you in person, Darlene, and to interact with you and to really talk about, what could we do together, because these issues of social and environmental impact are bigger than any one company, bigger than any one brand. So I'm excited to hear what we can listen and learn from Wells Fargo and others, and what we might be able to build together.
I couldn't agree more. This is such a large, complex issue that collective efforts are really needed to create change. And it's going to take more than just the financial institutions. There's going to need to be policy change and systems change and narrative change, right? Because policies are built based on narratives, and there are a lot of false narratives out there. So I think that collectively, this is our moment. I think we're at an inflection point where we can really work together to drive meaningful change and help everybody fully participate in the economy, because we're all going to do better when everybody can fully participate in the economy.
That's right. Love it.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Darlene. Thank you, Reba. I believe that concludes our panel. So thank you very much for sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you, Luke.
Thank you.